beginning doesn't have to be as thorough introduction, Lucy, to know you're busy. So if you could just tell us a bit about yourself and what you do, and go from there.
Yeah, no problem. Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Stone. I'm the founder of YOGADOO. And YOGADOO is a company, it's been going for around 5 years now. We provide specialist children's yoga, mindfulness and meditation teachers to all educational settings, all the way from nurseries all the way through to university, but the main throw of our work is in primary schools. So we're in 60 schools, 6 teachers, including myself, working all around the southwest, but predominantly I'm based in Bath, but the Bath, a bit in Bristol, South Gloucestershire, Wiltshire, and a bit in Somerset as well. So yeah, we've been working for 5 years and we've grown, incredibly in that time as well.
Great. And the best discovery so far that we've made is that Lucy actually did some work with Hey Dougie on the BBC. Can you tell us a bit about that, please?
So I was approached because I do some talks and I've worked with Norland Nanny College in Bath, and we did a piece of academic research, and I've just become a bit known for as a specialist in children's yoga and meditation. So the BBC approached me, the CBeebies unit approached me to consult on Hey Dougie, which if you have an under 5-year-old, you've probably heard of. But it's basically an animated dog, voiced by Pointless star Alexander Armstrong, and I just basically had to write some scripts for him and write some production notes on the poses for Hey Dougie to do a series of videos, most of which were used on, all of which are on YouTube and Facebook, but they've used, I believe, some as a mix-up on the television as well. So that was really exciting. I never thought, because I used to be a BBC presenter and reporter, I never thought my two worlds would ever collide again. So it was great to work back with the TV production team in London and use my children's yoga knowledge to basically teach a dog yoga.
Great. Was it a Dougie badge? Was there one created?
It was a yoga badge, yeah, exactly.
Nice.
And of course, Downward Dog was Downward Dougie, so that was really good.
Amazing. And where we got cut off previously, we just started to talk about the work that you do in schools and how that it's inclusive and how important that is in yoga, but also in general getting children active.
That's right. So yeah, we work in many different ways, from breakfast clubs, lunchtime clubs, holiday clubs, all the way through to working regularly with small groups of children, whether that's children that are pupil premium, sport premium, but also, going in monthly and doing special PE lessons, or we've done sort of sessions where we give the whole school a taste of yoga or mindfulness. We've done themed weeks, so sporty week, healthy week, well-being week, round the world week, whatever it might be, we can probably find a yoga class to fit the theme. But the great thing we were just saying about yoga is that it's not competitive, and it's really good in this day and age where children often want that kind of immediate gratification or an award or a level to achieve, that actually you manage their expectations from the off and say, no, there's no grades. It's just about you finding some time for yourself to learn more about your body, to learn how you're unique. And also what we were just saying is that yoga really is a mindful movement. So it's thinking about every single millimeter of your body that you move, knowing that it might be different from one day to the next, not expecting the same results, but also learning about your breath. And the word yoga means union, which is basically the connection of the body and the mind, but also the movement and the breath. So there are not many other forms of exercise where you really have that mental and physical connection. And that's really important in this day and age, and especially as children become sort of tweens and teenage, learning that their bodies are all different and not comparing. One of the foundation blocks of yoga is non-comparison and non-ego. So for children to drop those two things at the door is, I think, quite refreshing, quite different, sometimes takes some time to get used to. But actually, once they get the hang of it, the benefits are huge. So that's why I'm so passionate about teaching it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's not something that I've ever practiced or has been a necessary part of my life, but I can relate to it in terms of that differentiation and catering to different children's needs within a physical activity lesson, a physical education lesson. When I first came back into primary schools, having worked in secondary schools for a few years, it was really obvious to see those children that had really disengaged with PE, because not necessarily they didn't like it, because I believe that every child enjoys being active, but it was more so that there was maybe one game of football going on and you've got somebody at the lower end of the class playing against somebody at the higher end of the class, and it just turned them off. So I can 100% see a place for this in the school setting. With across like the broad age range then, I mean, we work with primary schools. Would you do a session for, say, a 4-year-old, 4 and 5-year-old in foundation? Would they be able to access yoga?
Of course, yeah. I mean, we've taught 18-month-old children and 2 and 3-year-old. If you can stand, then you can do an element of yoga. So the difference between a 4-year-old and a 14-year-old would be obviously some of the developmental differences, maybe in terms of coordination, knowing their lefts and rights,
Sure.
balancing, but also their attention span and their kind of the length of the class that you might teach. So you might start with like 15-20 minutes with the little ones, but with the older children, year 6, you can do an hour, no problem. And also the way that we teach is not just regimented yoga poses. It's weaved in with games and exercises, working in pairs, working in groups, music, almost an element of dance with it, learning how you can put things together. There's lots of creativity. So it's not right, this is triangle pose, hold it for 3 breaths, now let's do downward dog. It's not like that at all. And we and really importantly, it's taught in a completely secular way. So it might stem from a religious background, but I'm an atheist. I don't have any religion. So when you're teaching in schools, you are completely respectful of all faiths and backgrounds. So absolutely, you can teach a 4-year-old and they love it.
Great. With I suppose there's probably some teachers that will be listening to this thinking, great, I'd love the idea of doing some yoga with my class, but this is a bit of a stereotypical thing to say, but I've got a group of 10 and 11-year-old boys who I just don't think will be able to engage with it, or maybe have that kind of stereotype in their mind of what yoga's like. How do you get them involved? Have you got any stories that you can share?
I do have an 11-year-old boy, so I can relate to that. No, I think, you can easily do some stereotyping, but I will read, and all of my teachers will read the room, and maybe we'd have a conversation with teachers in advance to see what kind of personalities we have, let's say, if there's any particular special educational needs. But normally what I'll do is start with a warm-up, which will involve moving quite a bit, because especially if a teacher's only in once a month or as a special treat, there can be an element that they haven't built a relationship with them. They might be wanting to show off or whatever it is. So you might just get a bit of that blast of energy out at the beginning, and then you just have to just find ways to engage them. But I think I've actually in 5 years hardly had any instances where you just lose control entirely. And I mean, we even work, I personally work with Bath Rugby Foundation, the charity, and we work and we actually target those groups that you're referring to, those often boys. We can't stereotype, but often boys. So I'll go in with a rugby coach. They'll have half an hour of rugby training, then we might do half an hour, even an hour of yoga and mindfulness, because actually what we're trying to do is to find ways to engage them in both a sporting capacity, but also a controlled and mindful capacity. And actually after sort of 6 weeks of working, they really don't want to stop doing the yoga and the mindfulness. I mean, and it's always surprising, you know, you always think they want the physical stuff, but actually once they've learned the skills, they often don't have it in any other part of their life. They may be having not so much sleep, you know, they might be gaming or on their screens a lot, or maybe they don't have a great you know, home life. And actually just getting them, I often just take the blankets and the cushions with me and just make it really comfortable for them for when they're having their relaxation. And you just, sometimes they fall asleep, and sometimes they're just completely, you know, zenned out. And it's just, sometimes the rugby coaches are just can't believe what they're seeing, because it's so opposite, you know, the opposite end of the extreme to what they normally see. But I think given half a chance, there might be an element of showing off, or you know, boisterousness, or whatever you want to say, or personalities or egos. But all of our teachers are really experienced in kind of knowing what to do, and as all our teachers that are listening and watching will know, you know, there's ways to deal with those lovely characters, and we don't want to get rid of that. It's just an element of time and a place thing, isn't it, to a certain extent?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it doesn't take a huge amount of time to break those stereotypes down. I think I had a similar thing with gymnastics and dance, but then once you've got them, and I think any good teacher can teach anything and make it engaging. And the same sort of principles apply with the lesson if you're teaching yoga, if you're teaching football. So yeah, I completely agree with you. So in terms of yoga then, what would you say the main benefits? Why should schools start to incorporate it perhaps into their curriculum more?
I think, I mean, we've touched on a few of them already, but that kind of non-competitive element, and you know, as I mentioned to you, I've got an 11-year-old boy, and I think I can't think of many other forms of exercise where the mental health benefits are so obvious, and learning coping techniques within a form of exercise which you can use in your everyday life. So the breathing exercises that you learn in yoga and mindfulness meditation, you can instantly walk out of that room and start using them in the playground. If you have an anxious moment or an angry moment, it's about learning to feel emotions, to let those emotions, to be aware of them, and to know some techniques to regulate and to help you in all situations. So for me, it's just an amazing form of exercise, because not only are you, you know, helping yourself be strong, it improves posture, it helps with flexibility, it helps with, you know, all of the sort of hamstrings and the growth elements. My son has got very long legs, and he's already not being able to touch his toes. Like I used to be able to do this. So it comes really quickly. But then also for me, it's the mental side. So it's the focus, it's improving attention span, it's helping with concentration, it helps with memory, it helps to relax. So if they are struggling to sleep, then they can use those breathing exercises like the 4-7-8 technique that we teach, which is in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. They can use that as they're going to sleep. And I think if you're mentally well, then you learn better. And you know, many of the schools that we've worked with have run reports, obviously, to justify the investment of yoga teachers coming in, or indeed us training staff, which we also do. And, you know, working with SATS groups, High Littleton School, Coombe Down, they've all seen incredible, you know, results from us working with their children, not just within the children, but actual exam results. So for me, it's just an almost like a no-brainer. It's a win. It's a different form of exercise. It's non-competitive. You're helping them learn coping mechanisms and techniques for life. And maybe you're even enabling them to learn better by being relaxed or more focused or more resilient within the classroom situation, or exam setting. So it's just, have I sold it yet? Where do you sign? No, it's just an all-rounder really for me. I'm a little bit biased though.
Well, only a little bit. That's fine though. And from what you're saying as well, it doesn't sound like it doesn't need to be a whole lesson thing. From what you're saying, I'm kind of interpreting it as you could do it any time during the day. It could be 5 minutes before a lesson to get everybody
Yeah,
in the right frame of mind. Would that
exactly.
fit?
Yeah, exactly. So, as I say, sometimes we've trained staff, so we've gone on inset days, or they call it twilight training in some schools. Not sure if that's across the school. Sounds very exciting,
Yeah.
but basically going in after school, and teaching staff. And you might only have a few hours, or 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, even 1 hour of just a few techniques. And then you can weave them in, like you say, at the start of the day. I know some schools that even use them in assembly now.
Yeah.
You can use them, basically it's like a pace changer. So, if you've just had playtime and there's been a row and they're full of food and they've got that energy and there's an after lunch moment, you can just have a couple of minutes where you just do some quiet breathing and just try and bring the focus back into the room and back on, get their game face back on, if you like, for afternoon lessons. And then also, yoga, if you read more about yoga, and I mentioned that the non-comparison and the non-ego element, these are all kind of principles of yoga, but another one is gratitude. And that's a really important one, I think, for children, to just appreciate what they have. And again, it's another great leveler that, okay, even the child from the best off background versus the child that's maybe come from a more, deprived background, let's say, in the same classroom,
Yeah.
can both think on a Friday afternoon of something that they're grateful for or thankful for. And it might be that they know that they're going to see their granny at the weekend, or it might be that they're getting, their bedroom's going to be painted. It might be, whatever it might be, something quite small or something
Yeah. Yeah.
huge. And again, it's great for the mindset, the mental health, to appreciate little things that we have each day, moments of joy almost. And especially after what we're all going through at the moment. I'm trying to do this with my own son. He's missing his friends, and funny enough, missing school as well, which I'm surprised.
Yeah.
But he's missing routine, and we're both
Yeah.
trying to take these positive moments. So yeah, I think it's not just the actions and the breathing, it's also the kind of way we look at things, which is really good.
No, I completely agree. I couldn't agree more. And you touched on something there that I want to go into a bit more detail on. Actually, it's around the behaviour side of things. I can't remember which school it was. I think it was a school in America that first trialed it. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but meditation as a form of restorative behaviour management type of thing, where they think about and they reflect on what they've done within that meditation, rather than having a detention or an isolation period or something like
Yeah,
that.
I have a mixed opinion on this one, and lots of
Okay.
people have asked me about this actually, because I don't think that we should be putting meditation, almost seeing it as a punishment. So
Right. Yeah.
or even mentioning it in the same breath. So if you say to a child, okay, you've done something wrong, you've either got to go and have detention, or you can go and meditate, they're therefore seeing, I don't know, that's kind of like a similar thing. I think if you've done something wrong, then there should be potentially a punishment and a leveler. But then I think if you want to have time to think about what you've done, and that should come afterwards. I would never want a child to think I'm meditating because I've done something wrong.
Yeah.
I think we should all be doing the meditation, and that will, we might be presented with a prompt to think about something that we wish we'd done differently, and that might then be when he or she brings that moment up. But I know I have seen that, and I do know where
Yeah.
they're going with it, but I would rather everyone did meditation and we still punished where it was necessary, because I just think, A, you've got to be consistent with your punishments, I suppose, but B, I just don't want meditation to be seen as a kind of slightly negative thing. It's a very positive thing to do. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I've kind of got a little bit of I'm not quite sure where I sit on it. I kind of get where they're going with it, but I do think that meditation is a positive thing in its own right.
Yeah. I mean, for our team, we don't actively get children to meditate, but we encourage our coaches and the staff that work for us to follow the kind of restorative behavior management guidelines. There's a book by a guy called Paul Dix. I don't know if you've heard of him. The book is called something like When Adults Change, Everything Changes, or something like that. And it's about how to reflect, or get children to reflect on what they've done, and then ask the right questions, pertinent questions, and then they sort of change their behavior. And that book talks about meditation. I might need to go back to it actually and see what kind of take on it he has. But Paul Dix is excellent, so it'd be worth checking out that and seeing what kind of stance he takes. Okay, in terms of meditation then, I mean, we talked very heavily around the children. I know we have touched upon teachers, and it's something that I've actually started doing as a daily practice now, twice a day. And it was and I talked about breaking down those stereotypes earlier, and it was certainly that for me when I started doing it about 6 months ago. And I kind of just touched on it, and I did it whenever I felt stressed. But I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do it as a reactive thing now. I'm going to make it as part of my daily routine. So for teachers out there, I know Headspace is free for teachers, isn't it? I think for them to use as for that guided meditation. Would that be something that you would recommend? I'm guessing it would be a yes.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think I recommend it to everybody. And I also, it's interesting that you say that about the stress, doing it when you feel stressed. I was the same. So when I was a BBC journalist, that's when I started to learn to meditate for the same reasons. I was getting panic attacks and feeling quite stressed because it was basically my dream job, and I was actually feeling quite stressed doing it, so I couldn't kind of remedy those two things. So I learned when I was stressed, and then I stopped for a while, and then again when I got stressed I picked it up again, and then I realized that actually that's not the idea. And the best way that I describe it is it's a bit like an antihistamine. You take it all the time, and then that sort of stops you getting hay fever. So for me, now that I meditate the same as you, I meditate for like 20 minutes a day, two lots of 10 for me, plus teaching it, but that's 10 minutes twice a day for my own practice. So actually my stress levels are greatly reduced anyway. I'm not saying I never get stressed, but I'm a lot more resilient. I'm able to get a lot more perspective on things. I can distance myself. The way I react is different to stuff, and also I can help others. So I would 100% recommend to everyone, whether you're a head teacher or a hairdresser, to meditate, because for me, and I've said this, in talks that I've given, and it's not a dramatic over exaggeration, it saved my mental health 100%. Wow. It's just helped me in every area of my life, and it's made me much happier. I need less to be happy now, if that makes sense. After I was at the BBC, I was in corporate PR for 7 years, working crazy hours, traveling loads all over, good job, but hardly ever seeing my family, and just basically burning out. And that's when I decided to change and become a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher. But yeah, I 100% agree that everyone, and I would actually recommend you, if you're feeling all right, that actually this is the time to learn, because it's easier to learn something when you're feeling okay, even if you're feeling like you're on the track to burning out potentially, which is how I can relate to that. But if you can try and catch it before you get to burnout, or till you get to a really stressful situation, then you're going to actually help yourself a lot quicker. And the really important thing with meditation, and I also say this to people that I teach, is the ripple effect of you being well will affect everyone around you, whether that's your partner, your children, or if you're a head teacher at a school, your staff, your pupils. Everyone will feel the benefits of you being more being well. So that's the main thing. Come in, Fred. So my son's just coming into the door. Come in.
That's really interesting, and something you said there really resonated, because the mind is so complex, and it's so hard to understand what you're going through. I mean, I know myself better than anyone, or I'd like to think I do, but then something creeps up on you where you think, oh,
Yeah,
actually, I thought it was okay. And I had a migraine last week, actually, which is usually a sign that I'm stressed out. I
yeah.
thought, yeah, do you know what? When you start to reflect and think, why, what led to that, you can kind of see it happening. And actually, I hadn't been as religious as I should have been with the meditation. So it's something that I can certainly see where you're coming
You
from
know,
around the antihistamine thing.
and also the autopilot thing, and when you're not being mindful. So I teach mindfulness meditation, and when you're
Hmm.
not being mindful and you're falling into perhaps, you know, repeat behaviors, repeat how, reactions, how you deal with things, and that's when that's the moment you need to catch, basically.
Yeah.
So I think if you sit and meditate for 10, I mean, I do a live meditation every morning for free on Facebook on my meditation channel, which is called Meditation Rocks.
Yeah.
And anyone can come and join that. That's not for children, that's for grown-ups, although children do come and, like, I've had children coming with their parents, especially during this lockdown time. So 8:08 in the morning, every
Yeah.
morning, I do an 8-minute meditation for free. And all the previous ones are on there. So that I've started it on the 1st of
Okay.
April during lockdown. I started it. So there's almost 30 on there already that you can go and dip into, and it's live, and I stay online afterwards, for questions or anything like that, and tell me how it felt. So, and that's a really nice community. It's reached 20,000 people since the 1st of April already, which is
Wow,
just
that's amazing.
crazy. And
Yeah. Yeah.
we get around 30 live at the time, and then you get hundreds of views, thousands of views afterwards.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really good. And what I would say is that what that should tell you is that you don't need to do it for very long. And I'm sure you
Yeah.
might feel the same. I don't know how long you meditate for, but 8 or 10 minutes and you will feel the benefit after it. If you can do longer,
Mm.
great. But I tend to do 2 lots of 10, one first thing in the morning religiously, and then another 10 minutes either as a pace changer. So if I've just got to a school and I've been busy all morning, I'll sit in the school car park and meditate in my car for 10 minutes. Or if I've had a stressful day before I'll go to bed, and I let go of the day before I go to sleep. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's my two times really that I do it. But no, I recommend anyone, and you will have good and bad days. Even if you're a monk and you've been practicing for 50 years, you're still going to have a bad day where your mind is full.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that. Just give it a go, basically.
Yeah. It's amazing actually, because one of the things we say to our coaches again around behavior management, and I can certainly relate to this myself, is when it's coming to an end of a term or a half term and everybody's tired and stressed, my behavior management was always at its worst because I just didn't have the patience.
Yeah,
Whereas if you're energetic, you're happy, you've got loads of energy, and your lessons are quick and pacey, then you don't really have to worry about any behavior management strategies. And for parents at home, absolutely 100% recommend tuning in for your morning meditation, because it's the same for me at home. If I'm stressed at home, if I've got stuff on my mind, whether it's work, business related, or whatever it might be, then my patience with my two girls is the first thing to go.
yeah.
So yeah, it's
So
not
this is what
just
I mean
school,
about
it's
the ripple
home.
effect. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
but what we do is with stress is that we often layer, and I draw it as a target when I'm teaching. Your stress is that target in the middle, but you've layered up, all this thing. And then,
Yeah.
if you're stressed, say our stress might be our work, and then our partner might say something to us, and that's the next layer. Then we get stuck in a traffic jam, that's the next layer. And then we have a
Yeah.
bad phone call, that's the next layer. And then our son or our daughter speaks to us, and that's the final layer. And that's the layer that kind of goes, and it's because of all those other layers it's got to that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
But if we just dealt with that bullseye and then try to be mindful in all of the other layers, then actually when the little girl or my boy speaks to us, then we don't kind of take everything out on them. I was the same when I worked in PI. I'd have a bad day and then
Yeah.
I get a
Yeah.
phone call, and then I'd like, shout at that phone call, and it was not their fault. But I just layered everything on. So it's just trying to unlayer a little bit and deal with each thing separately.
The chimp paradox, I think, is
Yeah,
that what it's called?
exactly. Yeah. And the chatter in our heads, that's the meditation. If you can sort of stop that conversation that you have with yourself all day, every day, and often we're not very kind to ourselves as well. We might sort of beat ourselves
that's
up,
very true.
over certain things. If you can, I always sort of say to my son and to people that I teach, you're your own best friend. So if you wouldn't say what you're about to say to your best friend, then don't say it to yourself. And it's just about learning these kind of techniques, isn't it? Just with however old you are, 4 or 104, you can all take this on board, really.
Absolutely, and especially with everything that's going on at the moment in society and in the world in general, it's probably the best time to start right now.
Well, that's
Lucy,
why I
thank you.
started on that day, that 1st of April. I thought, well, I've got a captive audience. No one's really going very far, so I may as well get going. But I'll be there in the morning if anyone wants to join me. 8:08 Meditation Rocks.
Great. And Lucy, is there anywhere else, if anybody wants to, so if people working in a school and they want to find out more about you, is there a website they can go to?
Yeah. So the website is YOGADOO. So it's YOGADOO.co.uk, and we're also on social media. My email is just lucy@yogadoo.co.uk. I also have a yoga studio in Bath, which is called The Hive. And that's jointhehive.co.uk. So that's teaching children, teenagers, adults. But yeah, we do, with YOGADOO, we can come and it can be as small or as much. There's no kind of minimum contract, if you like. We can come and just do half a day taster, see what you think. And we can teach staff either skills for school or for their own well-being, for their own yoga and meditation training for them personally. It doesn't have to be necessarily to use as pass on for the children, but also then obviously we're working with the pupils. So yeah, just get in touch if you have any questions, and then we can have a chat about it.
Amazing. And it was 8:08, right, in the morning?
8:08 in the morning, yeah, and then once a week at night, but that night changes depending on what I'm doing. Yeah, so yeah, Meditation Rocks is on Facebook and it's live at 8:08 in the mornings.
That's amazing. Lucy, thank you so much for joining us. I'm
no
sure
problem,
if people are watching it live or are catching up with this, they're going to find huge value in this, and hopefully you can incorporate and find ways to weave it into your school day, and the children will reap the benefits. So thank you, Lucy, so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks a lot.